There's a video I did last week, and I believe it was one of those videos that really shined a light a lot on human nature, but I believe more on the protective mechanisms that actually push people away. A lot of my content does resonate with people struggling with relationships, how they perceive themselves, and the lies that only could be told to children that we still believe as adults. And I spoke about it in the last video, which was, the one thing that has paralyzed my life, which is the need to know it all and to be perceived as strong. There's been a lot of big changes, and I'm grateful for those changes. But guess what? With big changes come bigger changes. And it's momentous. So there's a certain point where there has to be surrender. And, sometimes you got to pick your hands up because you're out of this game. It's too big for you. That's okay, that's good, it should be, because that's really how you are to yourself. And so there are lies that are told to us as children, and we start to believe those lies as adults, and then those adults tell those children those lies. The need to be seen a certain way is irrelevant from being a certain person. If you're ever feeling like you're stuck, it's probably because you're in a position that you think you're in when really you are not there. And that's called, trying to think that you're in the valley when you're still climbing the mountain. You're going to find yourself tripping over your own feet. And so there was something I really wanted to talk about. It was in relationship to men, because I believe that, this will also really shine a light on for women, because you're supposed to understand your nature in relationship to how men are also supposed to understand their nature. And there was one thing I believe no man is willing to accept. The shame that they have around their desire for a woman that would burn their life down. Now, if you don't interact with this, well, you could look at reality. I think a majority of divorces end that way, where you're taking the L. And I know we often think, here's the thing that's dangerous though, and this is what I really want to make clear, is that the alternative is so convicted. It's so convicted. You can find your red pill narrative, and I'm not joking. It's very, very convicting. And I'll tell you why it's so, in a lot of ways, seducing too. And it's the same way it's seducing in the way that allows you to just kind of get all of the things that you want without you having to face yourself and your own vulnerabilities. That's why it's so seducing. It's there to kind of play into something that's not exactly real, but it's real for a little bit, and you can get a little taste of it, but you think that you could integrate that into reality. You're probably wrong. And so I've been really playing around with this, and it's been really fascinating, because I do believe there has to be an alternative for men. You can go ahead and find the guy who has a chalkboard and it's filled to the fucking brim about why you shouldn't trust women, and I think it's a little bit secondary, because I want to talk to you as an individual, and that's going to require you to reflect on this part of yourself. Now, you might feel fear, and I think that's actually very appropriate. I think what most men feel in relationship to women is fear. And I could say that's true even for myself, because that fear maybe manifests itself differently, but it still stays the same. I think that as young boys, I think we become really aware of the fundamental difference between men and women, and we immediately become self-conscious in relationship to it, even if you're developing very well. But at the end of the day, you kind of understand that this is something that's very real and does exist. And it's like, what exactly do women really represent as something that men need to start integrating? You're not separate from it. Now, that's the whole shame component. The shame component is that you're not connected to it, is that it's something arbitrary, some different species, and that really won't do you any well, because if you can't connect to the fundamental feminine essence as a man, then your interpretation of women is nothing but your pornographic ideology of them. There's a necessity for connection, and it actually breeds more connection, very similar to how disconnection breeds more psychopathy and narcissism. There is a fundamental fear that men do have in relationship to women. And even when I talk about it right now, I kind of feel that, it's actually relevant and applicable. And that's something even I experience. And it's in relationship not just to women, but to intimacy. And it's like, what are you really doing when you're looking for an intimate relationship? You are inviting an opposition. Of course you are. Now, the thing that's so interesting about the opposition is that if it's one for you, that's good for you, and it comes to your door, why do you separate yourself so much from it, like as if it's not something that is a part of you that you yourself interact with? And I think that right now, of course, you have to look at your life and just be able to realize, like, if you're not ready to have this conversation with yourself, don't try to apply this into a chaotic situation that you're in, where all of your integrity and self-respect has went out the window. And so this is what it was, and it's something that I'm going to be really interacting with this week. If this fear isn't addressed, then really what you do fear is a lot of what you don't quite understand, but also your vulnerabilities in relationship to that. Now, you take something like the story of Samson and Delilah, Hercules. That's another one. Adam and Eve. I think that one's essential. I speak a lot about the vulnerabilities of men because I believe that most men aren't actually looking for a committed relationship. They're looking for a safe bet. In the same way, a lot of women are doing the same thing. And I realize that the safe bet is the woman that allows you to experience what you like to experience for a little bit, but she either fits under the category of perfect wife and mother, but she's about as sexless as a robot, or you have the sirens. And more people are struggling with this. And I believe that if you started realizing, looking at your life, realizing the kind of partners that you're into, if that's happening, let me tell you what's really happening. Shame. The interaction of both gives you a better perspective of what is true about you, that you separate from yourself, and that's what creates that kind of manifestation. So, the more that I get into this, the more I speak about this, the more clear it becomes. The dangers of trying to make yourself seen as something that you're not is you become so susceptible to everything that you claim that you're not into. And so now this is the thing that's very interesting about shame, is that the people that experience shame also experience panic around the things that they experience desire towards. And so now there are also so many things that we experience this relationship with, and it's like the things that we tend to reject the most are also the things we're the most attracted to. What we tend to attract are also the things that we have in ourselves. Shocker. And there's also this, the people that you have around you are quite reflective of who you are, where you stand, the beliefs. And so, I feel like it really just shines a light on an experience that I had, and it was, why is it that some men are attracted to the destruction of themselves? And I realized, well, that's fundamentally true about every man. And so the more I was doing this work, the more I was even opening up, I realized that we're here to try to develop a relationship with that vulnerability. If men do not open up to the fact that they have these vulnerabilities, they have what their rationales have to offer. Now let me explain what your rationales immediately do. The alternative that you were trying to avoid is exactly what your rationale creates. If you're trying not to eat of the fruit, you create a rationale around how you're any different, you're going to eat of it, textbook, and I can bet money on it. So what I often notice is that people's ability to experience perhaps maybe even hopelessness, despair, sadness, grief, good. If you're stuck in a cycle, there's something you have to address. And if there's any cycle, there's typically a form of protection. And sometimes the form of protection we create is right before we make our big break. So if you ever feel like, who are these kind of girls that I'm attracting? What are these kind of relationships that I'm in? What are these kind of friends that I keep having in my life? Well, that's perfect. This is the right time to have that conversation. But I'll also tell you, it's also the right time to throw away of how you want to see yourself, because this is going to deeply challenge you. So what I've been working on recently, and something that has been coming up into my life, which is what we typically oppose is also what we attract. And simultaneously, the only way forward of this is to incorporate a little bit of what the opposition is suggesting without you considering the whole thing like that. Because a lot of the time, what we actually fear is our own capacity. We also even fear the joy that we experience with a particular experience. And I could share myself personally, and it was something so funny because I was talking about it just right before we took this video, and it was, just like, dude, fuck everything else that I said. I'm just avoiding the fact that this is incredibly uncomfortable. Incredibly uncomfortable. Holy shit, it's so uncomfortable. Like, I had to beat around the bush to tell you a story about my life. But I'm not the only person experiencing this. I know that so many men are experiencing this, and even women are experiencing this. We tell ourselves what we should attract. What we want to attract is very different than what you do attract. If you cannot interact with what you do attract, what you want to attract is nothing but a way to escape what you are being met with in your life. And so, as of recently in my life, I was meeting what I like to call them harpies, like the word female demon. And for some women, they go, oh, it's just the bad boy types, the animals. Okay, fair enough. Why do we reject it is a better question to ask. What about it do we feel fundamentally shame around? And it's something I've noticed about most people, is that they've separated them so much from the things that they themselves are attracted to the point to where it just keeps popping up. And when it just keeps popping up, you have to surrender. And the reason why you have to surrender is because this is bigger than you. Even if you're in a crowd of 100,000 people and you still attract the thing that you know, you can't beat the system. You got to surrender with it. And sometimes we're afraid of that. Well, I'll tell you why we're afraid of it. It's going to shine a light on what you truly value. We don't really connect to who we are. We connect to the ideas that give us power. We connect to the value system that protects us. No, do you really connect to the self? Well, I'll tell you something about the self. The more you interact with it, the more the story you tell yourself about you dissolves. So there is something that does terrify us. Are you really the person that you say that you are? Because clearly it's confronting you. And so now you guys might think, well, what, Naftali, what do you have in store? Well, not only have the women been progressively becoming more diabolical and sinister, I think I met my match. What I mean I met my match is I met something that challenged me so much to the point where I was spinning in the middle of a fucking parking lot, leaning up against my car, having a conversation. So I'm at a cafe. I usually get a coffee by the time it's 5 o'clock. I need a little decaf to kind of just end my day. And as I go right by this coffee shop, my friend gives me a call. And as my friend gives me a call, I have my eyes locked on this one girl. She is very pretty. She's tall. She's a little bit older, maybe 30. And my friend calls me and he goes, hey, you want to hit the gym at 30? Thank God he called me. Because I think I would have been still having that conversation with that girl till now. And I'm not hiding this, but I really want to make this very clear. I don't want to play into a rationale that makes me seen as strong. I want to be strong. I think that sometimes you guys just have to hit the fundamental floors of yourself if you really want to test your limits. My God, you want to really see the peaks you can reach. Take a deep dive. We have upper limits and downward limits. We have to know both. And that's the only thing that really satisfies us. So as my friend says that, I'm clearly like, all right, work out in half an hour, right? And I'm thinking about the girl right behind me. She's standing up and she's reading a book. And I make my order. I told my friend I'd see him in about 45 minutes. I go up to the girl and I say, hey, do you usually read standing? And she laughs and she goes, oh no, I just didn't want to sit there where the dog was barking at me. And I said, that's probably because you're reading this book, The Erotic Mind. I think the dog was getting, was criticizing your reader's taste. We were flirting and we were laughing and the conversation was progressively becoming more sexual. That's really what I'm drawn to, the sexual types, the passionate types, the playful types. And she has all of those things. And I'm like, hey, this is pretty cool, we're getting along. And she knows she's reading something that's reflective of perhaps what you would think is awareness. My intuition was saying the otherwise, which was this person is diabolical and sinister. So 10 minutes into flirting and actually picking up the heat, she goes, oh, by the way, I'm engaged. And I said, okay, that's cool, you're engaged, you go ahead and make your decision. So I steer away from it. And then she goes, oh, if you're interested about what I highlighted. And of course, she's a book on intimacy. So in other words, she's pretty much trying to say, hey, look at me naked. So I'm like, okay. And she highlights all the parts of the book that show me that she lives this dualistic life. A split is what I call it a lot. You probably heard it in my other videos. I closed the book. I handed it back to her. And I said, hey, do you live a dual life? If you know what I'm saying. What I meant was, are you a hooker? And she goes, yes, I'm a sex worker. And I said, is that a polite term that you've created to not accept that you're a hooker? And I said that particularly to play around with it. And she laughed and she goes, yes. And I said, okay, so people pay you for sex. Okay, but here's the thing. My car is down there. I'm gonna go walk to my car. She's like, I'd love to walk with you. So now I'm talking with this person about how she's sleeping with other men and she's engaged. But remember, she's reading a self-help book. So now in my head, I'm like, I don't attribute signs of lack of awareness. I don't attribute signs of perhaps maybe, I would never do that, right? At least that's what's coming up to my head. Here's the kicker. I'm drawn to her. What I'm fundamentally interacting with, especially at this point, is, we get all the way down to the car and there's a certain point where eventually I'm just laughing, but also I'm feeling something called fear. Not just fear, shame. Because I'm interacting with somebody who's interacting with another man as she's betrothed, but also she's not. So I just made it very clear. I said, there's just so much dishonesty in your life to the point to where you think that this has any value. Regardless of the intellectualization, what I'm really speaking about is the desire that I had for her. Now, this desire was so powerful that I kept entertaining the conversation. And I was literally like, whoa, this girl is so hot. And I was like, what is happening? There was a certain point in the conversation that I guess kind of took me out of the trance. And it's that I realized that this girl knows nothing about me. None of my needs would ever be met in this situation, yet I'm so drawn to it. And well, this is the billion-dollar question. Why are you so drawn to the things that give you the least of what you need? And so I get back in the car because I had to go to the gym. Thank God I did. I tell her, go reevaluate your life. She probably tells me what I like to hear, which is, of course, you changed my life, right? But again, that's playing into the bullshit. And I get in the car and I drive to the gym. I swear to God, if you've ever had a flashbang in Modern Warfare 2, you're fucking like right? Like, what's happening? I didn't even know what the fuck's happening. There was despair. There was hopelessness. There was sadness. And what went through my head, it's like, if I'm only attracting this, then I'm fucked. You know, I'm putting in so much work to be somebody who's connected to their values, who's integrous, who's, you know, at least has a relationship with their sexuality to the bare minimum. This was like the embodiment of evil. What's going on here? And so then I realized that actually there was something interesting, is that after I've been doing a lot of reflection, a lot of work, and even something my coach has helped me with, is that I was able to come to something much deeper. And it's when I woke up to the matter, is that every man is drawn to an Eve. Can I remind you of who Eve is? Eve is the woman that was made for you, that ate from the fruit selfishly, not even a consideration of you. Not only did she do that, she offered it to you and deconstructed paradise, all for herself. Now, here's where the tone changes. You know what I noticed about a lot of what the other narratives have to offer men is a rejection of that existence. I'm ready here to tell you the kind of strength and courage you need as a man in order to face it. I was doing this in the office that I had with my coach. I was like, no. What do you think if I didn't look at it? I'd repeat the damn thing. And I realized that, you know, it wasn't so much about the person or what that person mirrored in me. It was about the shame that I had around the desire for a person like that. There was nothing but self-destruction. I looked at her life, you know, behind her partner's back, all of this secretive, dualistic, diabolical behavior. But it was picking up on so many things in my relationship with women. So much noise, getting louder and louder. But really, what was I really picking up on? Oh my God, my vulnerabilities as a man and the fear of that happening to me. Now, if you compound fear and shame together, you have a man that runs from a life that calls him to tend to it. What I fear most is idealistic thinking, that I should be into this. But hey, you hear this. Reality comes knocking and you open the door and what do you see? Everything that you've been running from. The romanticization of life is partially a problem because it diminishes the romance that is in it. The whole thing completely can be quite horrifying. The first damn story in the Bible is technically a story of somebody's own nature that they are playing into, that men secretly desire. And they think that the woman that they really love won't be just like an Eve. I'm sorry to break it to you. Every woman that ever walked on planet Earth is like an Eve. And every man that walks is like an Adam. Adam has to embrace something here. The desire that he feels for her is a very real thing. The truth exists outside of that. A strong man isn't one that rejects these aspects of themselves. I think it's one that embraces the vulnerabilities of what it is to really have a woman in your life. There are too many people succumbing to a narrative that doesn't allow them to grow, that makes women the enemy. I want you to be able to understand the things that are in you that make you susceptible and weak. The fundamental insecurity that most men never want to accept about themselves. You see that? I wrote it down. That very same thing that you feel is the same thing that I feel. And I'm at a point in my life where I'm really looking and serious about the person that I want to be with. But guess what? I'm not seeing anybody who's doing this shtick. I'm eating hookers at a coffee shop. Now, I find there to be a lot of beauty in this story because the more that I speak about it, the more that I realize the universality of something that I believe that we all struggle with and something that I struggle with too. When I was interacting with this, all I felt was despair and hopelessness because I felt like something in me was attracting the wrong person. And why am I attracting this? Shame. The better question is, what do you reject about what you attract? Because I'm beginning to think that you feel shame around the things that you desire the most. If you cannot interact with that with courage, without resorting to a story of altruism, you'll never find the truth in yourself. And guess what? You'll marry a woman that represses the truth about her and her nature that is like Eve. The truth is, the vulnerability that is required in each other to look into each other's soul requires so much strength. We're two individuals who don't deny what they are, but who can embrace it and understand that we really know who we are based off of the values that we uphold. And let me tell you when your values really shine. It's when you are placed in front of not only the object of complete and total desire, but the very thing that almost feels like it defines you. That's how you know you're connected to a value. So don't look to opposition of life. Look to the invitation of the opposition to develop a connection with a value system that helps you to reflect truly on who you are. Because I'm here today. What's going on, everybody? I have an absolutely huge announcement. I am launching my new school. Now, this isn't just another cool way to watch more exclusive videos. If you like this one, it's a way to really start integrating all of this material because it's been my life's work over the last 3 years. Now, the beautiful part of it is that it's constantly uploading every week, meaning that if you like the beginning stuff, that's great, but you can also grow with me. I don't just believe that the work that I do is just to help you guys. I believe that it helps me in ways access inner beauty that I've never seen and discovered before, and I want you guys to be a part of this process collectively with me. I believe that the transformational process and the growing process is one that is for those who are willing to connect with their humanity, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. The best part is it's not just the videos. It's going to be me and you in the community integrating every one of those videos and some of the parts in your life that you believe that you're having struggles with. If this is you, you will see the link in the description, and I can't wait to see you join the revolution.